Results day can feel overwhelming for students and for us as teachers as well. So today I'm going to be sharing with you how you can best support your students on Results Day 2025, navigating UCAS Clearing with them and also helping them to move forwards with confidence. Hey there teachers, welcome to Miss Estruch Teach Tell, the podcast where every week I dive into all the tips and tricks that make teaching life so much easier. Whether you're a veteran educator, an early career teacher, learning the ropes or balancing the classroom with being a busy parent, this will help you streamline your workload and bring a bit more balance to your life. You bring the coffee and I'll bring the teach and tell. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Miss Estruch Teach and Tell, the podcast designed to help busy teachers like you save time, reduce stress and get practical strategies to support your students and yourself. I'm your host, Miss Estruch, or Katie, and today we're talking about one of the most important and emotional days in the school calendar, which is A-level results day. So let's jump straight into it. What we as teachers need to know, maybe prepare for, if you're going to be going in on A-level results day. Now, you might not be going in for A-level results day. It is the summer holidays. You might be enjoying yourself or relaxing. I am someone that has always gone in on A-level results day out of curiosity to see how they've done, wanting to support students. And also when I was head of biology, head of science, I didn't have to, but I did go in as well from that standpoint as well to support students for various different reasons I'm going to go through. So this is specifically if you are going in for results day, or maybe you might get students contacting you as well via the school email, what you can do to help. So first of all, your exams officer is also going to be in. I'm assuming you know who your exams officer is in your school, but maybe you don't. If you aren't a head of a department, maybe you're relatively new to the school, you haven't had any need to have any interactions with your exams officer. So if you don't know who your exams officer is, I'd make sure you do know, because on results day, if students do want to know about the priority review of marking or review of marking, things like that, they normally get directed to the exams officer who will give them information and tell them what to do next. So you need to know who is the go-to person to direct them to. But let's look at what you can do personally on results day if one of your students comes up to you asking questions. And the most common questions I always get when I'm there are, what do my results mean? Am I close to a grade boundary? Do you think I should get a remark? Which is actually technically called a review of marking, but that word or phrase remark is kind of stuck. So in this scenario, the first thing that I always do is ask if I can actually see their breakdown that they've been given. Because some exam boards, where they tell you what grade that you've got, they also actually give you the raw mark out of how many marks each paper was worth, and therefore an overall. And that then means you can work out if they're close to the next grade. And the other thing is, some exam boards still don't. Maybe they're going to change it this year, but for example, AQA, they don't publish that information on the sheet. Other exam boards do. AQA don't unless they've changed it now this year. And instead, that means as a teacher, you have to log on to the extranet, go to your student results, and then you can have a look at the breakdown of the students' raw grades. Either way, you can work this out from their sheet that they get given, or you might have to log on. Grade boundaries are publicly released on results day. So then you can just simply search AQA, A-level, grade boundaries 2025, or whichever exam board it is. And also they will publish it on their website. They probably actually will tell you what time it goes live. I think it's often like around 8 a.m. they publish the grade boundaries. So I would make sure if I was going in, I would always find those grade boundaries and either print it off or like write it down on a scrap of paper. So I had that with me, because that's the most common question is, can you help me work out if I'm close to the next grade? Am I near a grade boundary? And to do that, you need the grade boundaries and you need to know what their raw score is. Once I've then got that information from a student, always look carefully at how big is that grade boundary for each grade, because if it's quite a narrow band, you might not want to be recommending a review of marking, because grades can go down as well as up. So I typically, if a student said to me, do you think I should get a remark? If they are 1 or 2 marks away, I do recommend they get a review of marking, especially if it is linked to them getting the next grade up, which they need to get into university. I have had students in the past who got an A in biology and they want to know, should they get a review of marking to bump it up to an A star? And their university grade didn't even depend on it. They'd already got in. They were just frustrated they didn't get an A star. And in that situation, I do always say to them, first of all, check how close they are, and then just say, if your university grade doesn't depend on this, there is a chance you're going to pay for a review of marking and it's not going to go up and it's just a waste of money. And an A is an amazing grade. So I personally wouldn't, but if you're happy to spend that money and potentially it's been a waste, then go for it. But if they are close to the grade below, I would never recommend it because it could go down. So that's why it's so important that you do check their raw scores with them and they don't just think, I'm going to go for a review of marking just in case. They need to see, are they close to the next grade? And yeah, if they're 1 or 2 away, I definitely recommend it. If they're more than 5 away, I do always say, rarely have I ever seen someone go up by 5 marks. I have seen it, but it's incredibly rare. So you can pay by all means, but fully expect you might not go up a grade and therefore it's a waste of money. Which actually, just to point out, if they do get a review of marking and the score changes, they do get their money back because it was an error in the marking, therefore you get refunded. But if there's no change, then you don't get that money refunded. Now, the next thing linked to this review of marking that I do suggest is get one paper reviewed at a time, because if you get one paper reviewed and that goes up, then you're sorted. You don't have to pay for 3. But the other reason is you might have one paper goes up and maybe another one goes down and then it's cancelled out. So you're better off doing one at a time. Get one of them reviewed. If that didn't change, then go on to the next one. If that didn't change, then go on to the next one. So that's what I suggest as well. Now, linked to this, I did use that phrase priority versus standard review of marking, which is the term for basically remarking, but it's not necessarily called remarking anymore because that implies it's marked from scratch, but instead the existing marking is reviewed to see have they applied the mark scheme correctly or not. And if it has been applied correctly, then your mark doesn't change. If in the review it hasn't applied the mark scheme correctly, then the mark changes. But that's why it's changed to review of marking. And that terminology changed quite a long time ago now, maybe like 5-10 years even. But the priority costs more money because it means it is done quicker and you usually get the review of marking completed within a week or even less than that. And the point of this one is if a student's university grade depends on them going up, they can pay for this priority review of marking. Universities will often hold their place if they've contacted them to say, I was 1 grade off, I was actually only 1 mark off, I'm going to pay for a priority review of marking, will you hold my place until I get that back? And often they will do. So that's why you might want to recommend paying for the more expensive review, which is the priority version. Now, if their university grade doesn't depend on it and they just want to get a review of marking because they can see they were close to a grade boundary, then I'd recommend that they just do the standard review of marking. It's a cheaper option because it's not going to be done as quickly, but it still doesn't take that long. Normally they get it back within 3 weeks or even less than that. Now, the actual cost of these two, I'm not sure because it does change every year, but that's again something the exams officer would be able to tell them. And most schools will actually publish this as a sheet of information that they put inside of the envelope with their results as well. So I don't know if your school does that. My schools always did that, where the different review of marking options were written there. So were the costs, as well as an explanation of how to go about doing that. And that means I would then just say to their students, right, let's look at this sheet here that you've also got, talk them through what it means, and then direct them to the exams officer so they can then go and fill in the form that they need to request that review of marking. Now, aside from all of those practical things, our role as a teacher on that day is also to be there to reassure, support students, and just to listen. And that's what I'd often do. I'd be keeping an eye out for students which I knew hadn't got the grades they needed for university, because I was actually able to look this up in advance because I could see on the extranet what grades they'd got, and I knew some of them needed to get a particular grade, or maybe I knew someone was an A-star student all year and they ended up with a C, or whatever it might be. If there were students that I'd seen the results beforehand and therefore knew that they might be upset, I would just try and keep an eye for when they turned up to see if they were upset and they stayed there and they would need some support. Now, depending on what your role is, you might not get access to that information. I only did because I was a head of department. If you're a classroom teacher, you might not have access to that. But you might just want to keep an eye out for students that you teach, that you know, to see whether they're celebrating or whether they're looking really sad, worried, not knowing what to do, so you can then step in to either congratulate them because they've done so well, or even the ones that haven't done well, I'd still congratulate them to say, look, you've still got your A-level, assuming they got higher than a U, got your A-level, it's a decent grade, there are still options in place. And that's then when I've talked them through what their options are, which takes me into Clearing, UCAS Clearing 2025, some of the essential guidance that I would talk the students through. So first of all, it's worth just directing them to the UCAS website because all the information is there so they can reread it and process it again because they might not be taking in what you're telling them if they're really upset. But Clearing actually opens at 1 p.m. on the 14th of August 2025 for the results day places. And they can use Clearing if they applied after the 30th of June, they didn't receive any offers or didn't accept any offers, if they didn't meet the conditions of their offer, meaning they didn't get the grades, or if they've decided to decline their firm choice because maybe they did better than expected or they've just changed their mind and they don't want to go there anymore. So those are the situations in which you can use Clearing. And as I said, I would encourage them to look up all of this information on Clearing, but also they need to then go to Clearing courses on the UCAS website. This gets updated in real time throughout the day, and this is where you find all of the courses that have spaces at each university. And the reason this is changing constantly throughout the day is students are going to be accepting and declining offers throughout the day. So it is worth them constantly checking if they haven't found something they like the look of straight away. So as they look through all of the courses and universities available, you can then write down which ones you're most interested in, and then the next steps are you would then need to phone that university's admissions team, and they will have that information very clear on their website on results day. Have ready with you your UCAS personal ID, clearing number, which doesn't become available unless you are automatically put into Clearing because you didn't get the grades or you declined your result. That will be on the UCAS website and the UCAS hub, but you only get shown that if you are eligible for Clearing. I would also have my grades as long as the UCAS points and just bullet pointing the course that you want to do and why. Find somewhere quiet that you can take the call, have good phone signal because you don't want to get cut off halfway through your phone call. Students need to or should be making the call themselves, and just be patient as well because there's probably going to be a queue. But what you would then do is phone up the university, you tell them the course that you're interested in, tell them the grades that you've got, and then they will tell you if there's still space, whether you meet the criteria, and they will give you an offer there and then. You don't have to write another personal statement. You don't have to reapply like the whole process again. They've got your application on UCAS already, but they will then give you the offer. They will hold that place for you. I think it's normally about 24 hours. It might be 48 hours now, but again, it'll be on the UCAS website, but they hold it for you because then what you can do is phone multiple universities, or the students can phone multiple universities, get multiple spaces held for them. Then they can go and research from the ones that they've been given offers, which course, which university do they like the sound of the most. Then they can go onto the UCAS hub and accept as their firm choice the one that they like the most. But this is all made clear for them on the Clearing website. The role here is for us mainly to direct them to the Clearing website, make sure that they realise they've got time to think about it once they've been given that offer as well. So that is it in terms of if you're going in for results day, how to support the students on results day, the most common things they're likely to want help with and how to help them with that, as well as Clearing. And I have actually put this all together into a little help sheet. So if you did want to take that with you so you know the ideas to follow, or even to modify it so that you could maybe print it and give it to students if your school doesn't already do something like that, then you can download that for free. It's in the description of this episode. But that is it for this week. Hopefully you'll find that helpful. I know this is coming out at least a month before results day, but I'm now going to be taking a break. I've got one more episode left of this season, and then I'm also going to be going on summer holiday. So I wanted to get this episode in now because I won't be posting in August, and you can always come back to it again in August to listen. But that is it for today's episode. Hopefully you did find it helpful. If you did, it would really help to support my podcast if you could leave a review or a comment as well, because that really helps boost the profile of this podcast so that it can reach more teachers like you and support an even bigger audience. So that's it for this week. I'll see you next week for the last episode of the season. You bring the coffee and I'll bring the teach and tell.